G'day, it's Geoff Lewis here from Series, and welcome to part 2 of Edge of the Earth. We're currently halfway across the state and we're on what is known as the Great Divide. This is what splits the east coast from the west coast. And as you can see behind me here, it's going to be a pretty chilly journey, but it's going to be an excellent adventure, so stay tuned. The west coast of Tasmania is vastly different to that of the east coast. It's dominated by large, rugged mountain ranges that straddle the coast, similar to that of a spine. This is due to the immense force that's occurred over millions of years, as 3 parts of continental crust have been pushed together to form these large mountain ranges that now dominate the landscape. The Land Rover Series 3 had been running fine. We'd done over 150 kilometres on our first day. But we'd noticed that the front passenger side wheel didn't seem quite right. There seemed to be a bit of excessive vibration coming through the passenger side footwell, and a few clunks as we went over a few bumps that didn't sound quite right either. On closer investigation, we found that this was actually due to a loose wheel bearing, which is pretty commonplace to be found in these vehicles. Though by carrying all the right tools as always, or enough to get us out of trouble, we were able to tighten up the wheel bearing, use a few fancy tools along the way, which I hadn't seen Damon use before, using a fancy electric Ryobi rattle gun, and this tool in particular would become one of the favourites of this trip. But with this and all the hub assembly back together, it was time to hit the road. Done. So we're here on the outskirts of Queenstown, which is a sleepy little mining town on the west coast of Tasmania. The reason why I wanted to stop here is just to actually have a look at this landscape, because it's in complete contrast to the landscape that you actually pass through, the dense woodland and all the rest. Now Queenstown in itself, and these mountains around here, was first discovered in 1862. And not long after, alluvial deposits of gold were actually found here. And in 1881, the Mount Lyell Mining Company was formed. The Mount Lyell Mining Company really injected a lot of cash infrastructure into this area. And in 1896, the town of Queenstown was gazetted. So the formation of a town, basically. And after that, the town's gone through boom and bust cycles. The last boom, big boom, was in the 1980s. But why have we got a landscape like this? Well, it comes back to the Mount Lyell Company. Well, not Mount Lyell itself, but the underground operations that are here. What they needed was pick props or ground support. So what they had to do was cut down the timber that was plentiful in the region and use this to actually shore up the tunnels, the development drives and all the rest underground. The remaining timber that was here was used as fuel in the smelters, and this fuel, or this fire and this intense heat, was used to refine the ore that was being taken out of the ground. Now the problem with this was that one of the byproducts was actually sulfuric acid, or sulfur, and this was injected in great plumes up into the atmosphere, and at the time no one knew what impact this would have on the environment. But as it went up into the atmosphere, it reacted with the hydrogen that was present, breaking off the hydrogen in water, or H2O, and forming what we know as acid rain. This fell down on the region for nearly over 80 years, And over that time, it slowly whittled away the remainders of the vegetation that were here, and has left a permanent scar on the landscape. And that's why we have this moonscape that you can see here. The fantastic thing about Queenstown, though, is the local community. Instead of looking at this as a hazard and a possible turn-off point, they've actually turned it into a tourist attraction. And a lot of people come here simply to gaze at the stark contrast between the moonscape and the densely wooded area, just a little stone throw down the valley. So it's really interesting if you just stop, take the time, and actually look into the environment and find what you can see. So we're here on the bank of the Queen River, and as Damon just pointed out, why is it orange? Well, this is actually due to the breakdown of over 100 years worth of mining in this part of the world. The minerals are brought from great depths up to the surface, and when things break down, like the rust on your car, what happens? It turns a brown orange colour, and this is exactly what's happened here. Iron-based minerals that are rich in sulphur have been brought to the surface. They've broken down, they form rust or oxides. Now, the sulphur in that chemical composition gets liberated and reacts with hydrogen. Now, this can react either with water or hydrogen present in the atmosphere, breaking up what we know as water as H2O. And this in turn makes sulfuric acid. Now, sulfuric acid is used in your car batteries, and obviously the acidity in here isn't as strong as your car battery, but we're going to find out that it's probably not the kind of water you want to be drinking, as we're going to do a little bit of a test here just to see what the acidity is of the water and the sediments within this river. So the whole point of this video is to get across the idea that it's okay to go camping and obviously take water out of a river, but you really want to look at your surrounds before you do it. So anyway, we've got here just a simple soil pH kit, and pH obviously measures the acidity or the base, or how basic or non-reactive the actual water or the soil in this case is. So we've got our little plate, and we'll get a bit of sediment out of the stream. So we've got our pH dye indicator here, so we just need to put a little bit, just a garnish on it, and then we need to slowly mix it in the best we can. I'll just put a bit more on that. Right, then we've got a bit of light powder to chuck on too. Yep, and then we just need to wait for this to change colour. So, as you can see, we've got a yellow forming, which indicates that this is about a pH of 4. Now, what does that mean? Well, to give you an indicator, the tap water that you get out of your tap at home is about 6.5%, a pH of 6.5. So a pH of 4 is a lot lower. Your car battery is a pH of 1. Coca-Cola is a pH of 2.8. But the reason why you can drink Coca-Cola and you don't want to be drinking this is because Coca-Cola is carbonic acid. And this is an acid that the human body can actually break down and absorb. Whereas sulfuric acid, you don't want to go near that because you're going to have a real bad stomachache. From Queenstown we headed south, over a mountain range and along a lost road. This road slowly petered into a track and became enclosed in dense undergrowth, with high rainfall and torrents of water having rolled down off the sides of the peaks and had washed much of the quartzite gravel off the track. Though through the haze of the afternoon twilight we ascended, and the dense undergrowth slowly faded away as we increased in altitude and winded our way round the pearly white peaks. This track was last used to gain access to the potential site of the Franklin Dam. For over the last 30 years it's been left dormant, only to be enjoyed by a few intrepid travellers. This is a very special track in the fact that it gives access to one of the most enclosed and one of the most locked away parts of this world, the southwest. Okay, so today has been an exceptional day. We've just stopped the landy for the day and it's dark. And it's actually quite interesting because this is the shortest day of the year, so there's something like 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. So it is by far the shortest day of the year. But we're here in the southwest, and this is known as the Southwest World Heritage Area. And I came down this track about, I'd probably say 8 years ago, with some friends in a Ford Maverick, not a Land Rover, but it was a fantastic trip. And Damon and I have just come along the same track, and it's really interesting to see just what's happened in 8 years. There's a high amount of rainfall here annually, and I've touched on that already. And with that, because the track here hasn't been maintained, it's just washed it out like nothing else. But the Land Rover has taken everything in its stride, and I'm really impressed with the Toyo Tyres open country mud terrains, which are the 235/85s that we've got on here. I've talked about them a lot, but the off-road performance on this vehicle, they just work really, really well. So that's been, really, really good fun. But the reason and why I wanted to do this sort of update is the reason why we wanted to travel down this track, the Mount Mcall track, because it doesn't really go anywhere. All it does is it goes all the way down and just stops at a dead end. And from there you can go on a very perilous little hiking track all the way down to the base of the Franklin Dam, or base of what would have been the Franklin Dam, or in fact is the Franklin River. And people used to use this to put rafts down there, or kayaks, and then make their way out to Macquarie Harbour. But the track's just too far gone. Even in this vehicle, we got to the end and it was just so badly washed out that we've decided to turn around. So why we went down there was obviously to look at where the Franklin Dam actually was going to be built, because dams are a fascinating form of sustainable energy, but they also have a big downside too. And this area here is just absolutely fantastic. It is so beautiful, and it is just you've got to see it to believe it, really. And you'll see shots on this video, but it just does not do it justice at all. And it's fantastic that wilderness of this nature has been preserved. Like I was saying to Damon, it's 6,552 square kilometres, which is, just for fun facts here at Quiz Nights, is twice the size of Luxembourg. So that's huge. Luxembourg's a country, Tasmania is the smallest state, and you know, nearly 3/4 of it is locked up in World Heritage area. So we're really fortunate that this track's actually here for adventurers, four-wheel drive enthusiasts and all the rest, because otherwise you just wouldn't be able to see it. So it's been a really good adventure thus far, and we're really looking forward to finally getting over to the West Coast. That's going to be fantastic. We've been talking about that for a while, and we really want to check out Trial Harbour. I've been there many years ago, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that's changed too. So yeah.
As I mentioned, we camped on the track last night, and I did think it might get a little bit cold out here, and in the swag under the tarp it started getting pretty chilly. The pink swag really didn't quite stay off the cold, even though it's pink. So I woke up and we found this. So we know we're pretty elevated here. We're probably at around about 1,000 metres above sea level, and you can also tell by the button grass that we've got here, there's no big trees or anything like that also. But testament to the Land Rover, it started up even though it's half frozen over, and now we can finally get into the day and we can tackle this track. What you see behind me here is Lake Burberry, and this is a man-made feature. It's actually a number of dams that actually dam up the Eldon and King River. But the King River comes from the north, and up this part of the world there's a lot of mining activity, and there certainly has been over the last 100 years. This has caused vast amounts of tailings to actually get swept into the lake here. And this has caused much of the sediment to be quite rich in gold, and is probably one of the largest untapped gold resources in Australia. Why haven't people mined it? Why haven't people dredged it? Well, it's very simple. The gold itself is too complex to be able to chemically extract it from the sediments. So it's just going to have to lie in wait for a few more years until someone figures it out.
It was welcome to wake up to the sound of waves crashing on the coastline and to the sound of the creek nearby. We'd finally reached the west coast and had finally successfully traversed Tasmania. There had been very little issues from the Land Rover. The biggest issue had been having to sort out the ignition timing, which, with a bit of scratching of the head and some educated guessing, we had solved it. Well, close enough anyway. But this had been something that had been impossible the year before, due to the large floods that had hit the state, the worst floods in 80 years. And so to come back and to finally make it here, there was a real sense of achievement. We'd reached the destination, we'd made it. We'd finally made it to the west coast.
It's a real rugged coastline we have here, and it's impressive how powerful the ocean is. It's a beautiful day today, but I wouldn't want to be here when the weather turns sour. But the power isn't just in the ocean itself, it's also in the land formation too. As we can see here, we've got these veins in the rock that are now sitting vertical. However, this rock at one point in time would have been sitting horizontal. And due to faults and forces from plate tectonics and the rest, it's slowly been pushed into its vertical state. But geology and the actual Earth itself has a greater part to play in recent times. This coast to many is known as the shipwreck coast, and it's claimed many ships over the years. And this is all due to a mineral by the name of magnetite. Magnetite, as the name suggests, is highly magnetic. And a story that I once heard was about the discovery of a mine called Savage River. Savage River is rich in magnetite, or that particular region anyway. And as the story goes, ships used to come down the coastline, sail ships, using a compass. The magnetite around the Savage River area was so great that it would actually cause the compass to go off by 1 or 2 degrees. Now, multiply that by a mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, and before you know it, you're off by 15, 20 degrees. These ships would then obviously become lost or wouldn't know actually where they were in relation to landfall, and they would become shipwrecked on the coast and left there to rot away for all eternity. And there's many, many shipwrecks up along this coast. So it's very interesting when you start looking into it. As you can see from this series, the island of Tasmania is quite small, but it is dense in diversity. We've travelled less than 500 kilometres, and you can see the kind of terrain and the environment that we've been through. It just goes to show that some of the best adventures can be had only a stone throw away from your front door. And in my case, this is certainly where I've had some of my best adventures. Once again, thank you for watching, and thank you to our contributors, Toyo Tyres and Icom. Also, big thank you to our Patreons, and if you want to see more content like this, please click on the subscribe button down below, and please sure to hit the like button too. And I'll catch you in our next video.